Timothy Brzezinski.
Patty Purcell seconds the motion.
Thank you. Is there any discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries.
Thank you, Mrs. Corso, Mrs. Purcell. There being no further business of an official nature to come before the Special Board of Education meeting, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second, Autumn Ellington.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Abstention? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good evening. Welcome to a very snowy instructional committee meeting of February 1st. Sorry. Of course, sorry. Right as the meeting starts, the phone rings. I apologize. But I'd like to call this meeting to order. Our first order of business is to approve the minutes from our instructional committee meeting on December 7th. So we'll go ahead and start with Mr. Ross.
So, yes.
Thank you. Ms. Castelli,
Yes.
Ms. Allenson,
Yes.
Ms. Purcell,
Yes.
Ms. Raccio,
Yes.
Ms. Levesque,
Yes.
and Mrs. Corso, yes. Our next order of business tonight is some curriculum and possible consensus, starting with a new AP Bio textbook, and then moving into removing Earth Science honors for grades 11 through 12. Ms. O'Donnell, that's both of those are you, correct?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
I have Kate O'Donnell, Science and Technology Curriculum Coordinator. The first item I have up is the replacement of the AP Biology textbook. Carrie Palange and Donna Mitchell are the two AP Biology teachers. So they took time to look through 6 sample textbooks that we were able to find, and they chose the updated 2021 Campbell Biology AP version. They felt it aligned best with the updates in the curriculum from AP, and it had the best diagrams, and they really felt it was the strongest candidate by far among the other ones that they compared. Are there any questions about the textbook?
So let's go ahead and take, we need to approve this, correct? So let's take consensus, starting with Mr. Ross,
Yes.
Ms. Castelli,
Yes.
Ms. Allenson,
Yes.
Ms. Purcell,
Yes.
Ms. Raccio,
Yes.
Ms. Levesque,
Yes.
Mr. Votto,
Yes.
and Mrs. Corso, yes. Go ahead with Earth Science, Mr. O'Donnell.
Okay, so the second item is a proposal to remove the Earth Science honors course at the 11th and 12th grade level. So we have an Earth Science course for most of our incoming ninth graders. And we've been holding on to the Earth Science honors course for students who never got a chance to take the Earth Science freshman course. But now we've seen all of those kids come through. Next year will be the last group of kids who never had the chance to take Earth Science. So what we're hoping to do is to sunset this course, and we are working on a replacement course, which will come either at the next meeting or the meeting after that, like an environmental science type of course. But with students able to take the Earth Science as freshmen, we really don't need this course, and we're probably not going to have much enrollment anymore because there's such a small group of students who would even be available to take the course.
Ms. O'Donnell, is it in the program of studies or the curriculum and planning guide for next year?
It is available for next year. That will be the last year. Yes.
Okay, so that'll be, okay, thank you. Anybody else have questions? So,
Yeah. So do we need to put a date around that when it would be effective? In the
So-
consensus, do we need to say effective for 2022?
You can, and then we'll put it in the minutes as well.
any other questions? So let's take consensus to remove the honors Earth Science course starting in the fall of 2022, starting with Mr. Ross,
Yes.
Ms. Castelli,
Yes.
Ms. Allenson,
Yes.
Ms. Purcell,
Yes.
Ms. Raccio, Ms. Levesque,
Yes.
Mr. Votto,
Yes.
Mrs. Corso, yes. Thanks, Ms. O'Donnell.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Have a good night. So our next order of business tonight is policy and possible consensus, A through F. We'll turn this over to Ms. Latour.
Hi, everyone. So this evening for policy, we have a few items on the agenda. We'll start with letter A. It's the proposed adoption of a new / revised policy 3281.1. So this particular policy, in our efforts, again, continuing efforts to clean up policy, it is the combination of two older policies. So we took KMG as well as KMK and combined them into one policy, which is now 3281.1. The two prior policies were last updated in 2002. The policy committee kept the original wording from 2002, and the only change is that they're being combined into one new policy that will go under the 3000 series. Are there any questions or recommended changes that you would like to see?
So let's take consensus, starting with Mr. Ross,
yes,
Ms. Costelli,
Yes.
Ms. Allison,
Yes.
Ms. Purcell,
Yes.
Ms. Raccio,
Yes.
Ms. Levesque,
Yes.
Mr. Votto.
Just to clarify, this is the first read, correct?
Yes, this is a first read.
Oh, so we have, did I need to take consensus on first read?
I don't
I
think.
still
Well, you
need to
have
take,
consensus that everyone approved of the wording, so it's
Got it.
it's fine. You'll see it again at the end of the month.
okay, and Mrs. Corso, yes.
So letter B, the next proposed revision is for policy 1250. This is also a first read. The policy itself is an older policy, KI. It was last updated in 1997. So we, as a policy committee, took a look at it. The shaded is what we added to it. We wanted to bring the policy up to our standards in terms of buzzing into the main office, showing ID, wearing a visitor's badge. So you'll see all the items in the shaded are the items that we added to this policy. And we struck out certain things that we felt were either better worded in the shaded version or we no longer needed. So are there any questions about the changes or revisions to policy KI, which now becomes policy 1250?
Okay, let's take consensus, starting with Mr. Ross,
yes,
Ms. Costelli,
Yes.
Ms. Allison,
Yes.
Ms. Purcell,
Yes.
Ms. Raccio,
Yes, but I also put in a typo in the chat.
Thank you.
thank you. Ms. Levesque,
Yes, I have a couple of typos myself, but, well, they're just typographical errors. So yes, with the correction of those.
thank you. Mr. Votto,
Yes.
Mrs. Corso, yes. So that was our first read. We'll see it again at the end of the month, correct?
Yes. Okay, letter C is the proposed adoption of revised policy 1312. This policy was the old KLD and was not last revised, it was approved in 1985, never revised. So we took a look at the policy language. We compared it with current day CABE model policies and made the following changes. The strikeouts reflect sentences that the policy committee agreed to take out. And the shaded is what the policy committee agreed to add to this policy. Does anyone have any questions or recommended changes that they would like to propose?
I had a question, if you guys remember, at the policy committee.
Yes,
The second to the last paragraph on the first page. And let me preface this by saying, Dr. Menzo, this does not really apply to you at all. Not really, but doesn't apply to you. I'm thinking of the future. If all other remedies have been exhausted and the complaint cannot be satisfactorily resolved, the complaint may be appealed to the Board of Ed. No appeal will be heard by the board and no changes or accusations against an employee will be investigated unless the accusations are reduced to writing signed by the party making the complaint and presented to the board. I think we should take out through the superintendent. Because there just might be a case where it doesn't come to the board. Because a particular superintendent might not feel it's necessary. So I just thought we'd I like to see those last three words taken out of that paragraph. That was my idea.
And my concern was then who presents it? So we have to have some sort of, who's gonna bring it to the board.
Well,
The board chair.
that's, okay. I raised my hand.
Go ahead, Dr. Menzel.
What I was just gonna say is that, I would suggest that you put, to the board chair. And that, because I think we also need to make sure though that the superintendent, whomever it is aware that there is this coming to. So I don't know if you want to wordsmith it, that it goes to the board chair and the board chair, brings it to the board and shares it with the superintendent, something to that effect. Just that it's not, because it kind of just is left hanging.
Can I just clarify that, in dealing with previous superintendents, this was an issue. And I don't want to see that happen again. Because a superintendent might not want it to come to the board. And it would be okay if you leave it the way it is in the present policy that we have here. So that's why I'm just concerned. I mean, it's not a big deal, but it became a big deal a number of years ago, and Karen can attest to that.
Ms. Levesque?
I agree with Mr. Votto. There were circumstances that did present themselves. But if you look at the paragraph before that one, the complaint should be resolved at the lowest possible level. If the complaint cannot be resolved at the building level, either party is encouraged to bring the matter to the attention of the superintendent of the school. So the superintendent, prior to board contact, should already know about the complaint, I would think, anyway.
Correct. Yeah, the person would know about it. But again, I think it's just a matter of collaboration. Hopefully the superintendent and the board chair would have a good relationship where they would be communicating anyway.
Right. I think when looking at policy, sometimes you want to think not with the person that's occupying the position at this point, just, making sure that every eventuality is addressed. So I think, I know what Mike is saying because I was present for the concerns. If we can come up with some kind of wording that satisfies everyone.
We discussed this at length in our policy committee meeting. And I think that one of the sticking points was that there's 9 of us. And so if any complaint can come to any 9 of us, then any of us then bring it to Dr. Menzo, and that's just a lot. So I think the way we worded it was, it will be presented. It's real and presented to the board through the superintendent. There's really no choice in the matter. The letter goes to the superintendent, he presents it to the board, period. There's no choice in the matter. So if we're not comfortable doing it, I like it that way because I think that's part of the role. But if we're not comfortable, I do think we need to pick one person, whether it goes to the chair or operations, I don't know. But I think it needs to go through one board member. Otherwise, we have 9 people, 9 different people. Ms. Purcell and then Mr. Ross.
So you can't just say the superintendent or the chair? Would that resolve it?
We could. And we have to remember, this is last ditch effort. This is like, we're not getting, the parents aren't getting or the citizens not getting the resolution that they want. Mr. Ross?
Yeah, well, my understanding is the way it's currently written is it comes up the ladder and it goes to perhaps the school principal, let's just say there. And if they're not happy, then that person takes it to the superintendent. If they're not happy, then it has to come to us. And he can either say to the superintendent, I want to appeal to the next step. And then the superintendent will then hand it over to the chairperson, or that person can go to the chairperson. But if we get it as a board member, and it's the first we saw of it, we automatically will give it to the superintendent. No, Mike?
I don't think we're saying that.
That's what I'm reading.
I thought it's supposed to go to the principal.
Yeah.
It
First.
does.
Yeah.
So beyond that.
Whatever. Okay.
Beyond that, from the principal, it will go to the superintendent. And beyond that, it will come to us. But what we're talking about here is the procedure to get it to us.
But my
And it would-
point, with all due respect to everybody, what my point is if this complaint is directed at the superintendent, number one, and it's a legitimate complaint, the way this reads, he does not have to bring it to the board. Now, it could be a board chairperson if you want to designate somebody it goes to.
So why can't you just, I guess I don't understand why the simple fix wouldn't be and presented to the board, the chairperson of the board and shared with the superintendent. Just end the sentence like that way.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, because then the responsibility will go to the board chair, which I don't think any superintendent should have a problem with. And then as long as the superintendent is made aware that it's been brought to the board chair, just to keep that line of communication open.
Yeah, and that alone might solve the problem.
It could. I mean, the thing is that, but again, if it's presented to the board chair, and I don't want to, come in at the 11th hour and disrupt what the committee discussed, but just if that kind of captures the fact that somebody needs to be a point. I agree with Ms. Corso. There needs to be a point person.
Yeah.
So if there's concern about it potentially in the future being the superintendent as the point person, then put the board chair who communicates with the superintendent. Something very simple. 4 words solves the problem, I think.
Does anybody oppose that? Is anybody in opposition to that?
Nope.
Raise your hand. Okay, so Mrs. Latour, can you put that in there for the second read on that policy?
Yep.
Okay.
So
let's.
it'll say board chair and superintendent, not or, correct?
It'll be presented to the board chair and shared with the superintendent.
Okay.
That's passive. That superintendent is really, he or she is aware, but the board chair is the one who now takes the lead.
I think that's good.
No, I don't disagree at all.
So let's take consensus on that new language, starting with Mr. Ross.
Yes, with the new language.
Ms. Castelli,
Yes.
Ms. Allenson,
Yes.
Ms. Purcell,
Yes.
Ms. Raccio,
Yes.
Ms. Levesque,
Yes.
Mr. Votto,
Yes.
and Mrs. Corso, yes. Thank you.
Okay, the next one, the policy committee brought this to you as a first read, knowing that there needed to be further discussion. This particular policy was KGS, last approved in 1975. This is about the use of school equipment. And so in 1975, when this policy was created, I won't even tell you how old I was in 1975. It was a different time, obviously. The equipment was much different. Liability was much different. We had a very healthy discussion at policy committee about kind of how to move forward with this particular one. When you look at what was included in your board packet, the unshaded top part is the 1975 version, which allows anyone to borrow equipment from Wallingford Public Schools at the discretion of the superintendent of schools or his designate. The bottom section is a current model policy through CABE. We had discussion at the policy committee about either we presented a few scenarios that were very current and concerning about, especially a physical education equipment and the overuse of that. Would it still be available to the school to be able to be part of the program? What if someone got hurt using the equipment? I believe Mrs. Corso used the example of like a pitching machine, which has a different level of concern than potentially the risers from the music department. So we felt it was best to bring it to the entire board for further discussion. Some of the things discussed at policy committee were charging for the use of equipment so that upkeep and wear and tear could be addressed, or just not allowing the use of school equipment by outside organizations. And we really felt that that was something that the entire board needed to discuss. Did I forget anything?
No, that was pretty accurate. My example was if a baseball camp wants to borrow our pitching machine and somebody gets hit and injured with that pitching machine, that camp may have their own liability insurance, but that insurance may turn and say, well, it was the pitching machine's fault because it had a faulty blah, blah, blah. So that was our concern. And there's a lot of different scenarios around that equipment, around different types of equipment. Ms. Purcell and then Ms. Levesque.
Well, over the years, I've been asked many times to borrow equipment by Boy Scouts or different groups. And I just have to say, first off, our budgets are not huge to replace some of that equipment. And the supervision that I'd seen was not great. And I would kind of be on the side of, you know, if a principal, if there was somebody there from the school that would be there, like the PE teacher or the principal approved it, but just to have an open thing to let some of that equipment out makes me nervous. And certainly there's little things, I mean, not even a pitching machine, hockey sticks. I mean, there's so many things safety-wise that would make me very nervous to have out. And I mean, I've been in the schools when the Boy Scouts have been there, or the Girl Scouts or different groups, and the supervision sometimes is not what you would want it to be. And so those are things you have to kind of keep in mind.
Thank you, Ms. Levesque.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a couple of comments about the proposed changes. First of all, I'm really not liking the Board of Education shall permit. I'm more interested in may permit, but that almost sounds like a command. And we have had some concerns in the past with, believe it or not, risers and the request of being lent out. So I agree with Mrs. Purcell that I have some concerns about level of supervision by others and using our equipment as well.
So I think we need to decide whether we permit it or we don't permit it. And if we do permit it, are we going to charge for it? Mr. Ross?
Yeah, I'm not understanding this, I don't think. Outside organization comes in and uses the auditorium to present a concert. They're going to need some school equipment, i.e. the risers. Are we saying that if they come in and rent the auditorium and use the auditorium for a concert, they can't use the risers because it's school equipment? And on the same token, can they say that we can't let them use the lighting and sound system because it's school equipment? That would be my concern, because it's an outside organization coming into the school. If we do that, we're going to have a death knell to a lot of organizations that help youth and concerts and other events. So I would be really concerned about that.
Ms. Purcell?
Just to kind of help you out, Ray, a lot of times, like if you want to use the sound system, let's say at Sheen, and you're an outside agency, like a dance studio or whatever, you hire somebody from the district that takes care of that. Or if you're going to be at an elementary school and you're doing something, you need risers, you hire a custodian and they set it up and take it down. So in those situations, there's supervision in that kind of, so that maybe should make you feel a little better.
Then we have to put that wording in there.
Dr. Menzo, did you have something?
Yes, I think that there's a distinction between using as Ms. Purcell just mentioned, using equipment that is in a space that they've rented out. So the auditorium, natural pieces of that would be, the risers. We do have a separate piece for the sound system because remember we upgraded our sound systems at the middle schools and high schools. So we do have guidelines for outside groups who want to use the sound system. They do have to hire one of our staff members to run the systems because we just wanted to protect the incredible expensive investment that the town made. And that's not uncommon. Most districts with sound systems do that. They usually have either students or staff that will take on that responsibility. I think that what I saw this policy as trying to protect the board or have a discussion on is people want to take the risers off grounds and use them at another site, or take, like Ms. Corso said, take the the pitching machine and taking that and using it in their camp, not as part of an activity. So I think that's the distinction. It's like taking technology, taking a bank of Chromebooks and using them at another site. That has a whole nother issue. Technology is totally different than what it once was because of all the security measures that have to be put in place in the event that somebody, surfs the web in a place that we don't want them to surf. So I think, to your point, Mr. Ross, I totally agree that we have to kind of distinguish, but the way I saw the policy, it was more about people actually physically taking it out of district to use it for their own purposes. But I think that's a very different scenario.
Mr. Votto, and then Ms. Allenson, then Ms. Levesque, then Ms. Castelli.
I totally agree with what Dr. Menzo just said, but does that mean we need to include that in the policy, that this excludes people who rent a space in the school system, and because they're renting, they need to use some equipment in that place that they're renting? That would be okay, right? Is that what you're saying, Dr. Menzo?
I think Ms. Chair wanted to chime in too.
Yeah, I think you would want to include a reference in this policy to the policy about facility use and in the rental structure for facility use, so they can connect to one another and reference one another.
Okay.
Thank you. Ms. Allenson?
How often is like large equipment like the risers or the like being asked to leave the school?
I don't recall a time in my 12 years here.
I don't
Okay.
either. A building principal for several years. It's a rarity, and quite honestly, I was surprised when I saw this policy, and given its date, that there just isn't a lot of requests. There aren't a lot of requests, rather. So
Okay. I just wanted to make sure we didn't have something that was like continuing that we're now kind of throwing out the window.
most come through, as Mr. Ross suggested, when they're renting the auditorium or they're doing something within the school. Although there are some instances with smaller things that outside organizations like Girl Scouts or Brownies or Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts might ask to borrow something, and that's why I think it's a good idea just to kind of update this, because this is just so old that we need to put some guidelines in, and always give discretion, to the administration, because if it sometimes is going to depend on what they're asking to borrow. If they're asking to borrow, the flag on a flagpole so they can pledge the flag at the start of the meeting, that's very, very different than trying to, borrow 50 Chromebooks for some other purpose that they're doing. So you always do want to give that judgment back to the principal.
Cool. Thank you.
Ms. Castelli and then Ms. Levesque.
So Carrie kind of said what I was going to say about, we have a policy for renting space in the schools, and we could link the two. So thank you for that. Also, I just want to point out that we are also suggesting within this new verbiage, the board reserves the right to deny use of equipment for non-school use. So it's there. And yes, is one group going to say, well, why did you rent it to so-and-so, or loan it to so-and-so and you won't loan it to me? It's because we have the right to decide that. The other point I want to make is I know that there are some responsible groups that do borrow whatever. And I know as for a fact that Church of the Resurrection has borrowed some, I think it was some musical pieces. I'm not sure. Might have been, tambourines or something that we needed for choir. And we borrowed those. And so I really wouldn't want to deter total allowance of borrowing equipment when we know that it's not going to be abused, basically, that's going to be taken care of. So I like the fact that we have in here, we reserve the right to deny it. And I think that kind of covers us.
Thank you. Ms. Levesque?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. When looking at this, I know that we have agreements signed agreements that we require for the use of our facilities, is there an agreement form that would be used similarly in this instance?
I don't think so. On the facility use agreement, the groups will list the different equipment that they want to borrow. So that kind of aligns with that particular policy. To take something off site, I have not, in my experience, seen any sort of sign out procedure or anything like that.
No, there should be though. That should be, we probably.
I think there, yeah, if we're, yes, if we're going to have something leave and it's originally was paid for with taxpayer money, I would think that we would want some kind of a record and agreement if someone is taking it out of the school, that they're signing that they're responsible for it.
So what I can do is I can bring this back because we knew this was going to be a discussion. So I can adjust the language based on the conversation this evening and then add a form to go along with it modeled after the facility use forms and bring it back to the board for their review so that we can make sure that we are dotting our I's and crossing our T's and have everything the way that the board would like it to be in this particular policy. So based on the conversation this evening, I would probably recommend that it goes back to policy committee so that we could make the changes, create the form, and then we'll bring it back to you based on this discussion for a first read so that it has everything incorporated into it that you guys desire.
Okay, Ms. Allenson and then Ms. Purcell. Oh, no, Ms. Allenson. Ms. Purcell.
When you do the form, Carrie, is it possible to have a line that says approximate replacement cost? Because sometimes people have no idea. And I know you can't have an exact amount, but just an example is the PTO, we used to have a butt machine, which was like, $400 or $500 and people would borrow it, and so before they take it away, they know what they're kind of getting into. Okay, thank you.
I think the committee though also needs to discuss whether or not they're going to, and I don't mean to make this bigger, but for certain objects, do you like say it is that the pitching machine, are you going to require a deposit? Are you going to require, all of those layers? I just
No, because we're not renting that pitching machine out.
Okay, all right. Well, okay. So say it's I don't know what it is, but say it's something.
I'm sorry, Dr. Menzo. You can, when it goes back to policy committee, they can also decide that certain equipment over a certain dollar value doesn't get, rented, or physical education equipment doesn't get borrowed, but music equipment does, or there's
I think you need to have, I think it's good it's going back to the committee because I think there's more to ferret out here, just because there are so many layers to this. And again, like Ms. Purcell said, from her experience, budgets are tight and I'm, it's good tambourines go out, they come back, but I'm not assuming we're going to give out, xylophones and stuff like that we know are very expensive. So, or tubas. We don't want any tubas going anywhere. French horns. No, I'm just kidding. But no, seriously, it's a tough one because you want to make the school resources available to community within reason. That's the balance. So good luck.
Thanks.
Thanks. We'll take that one back to the committee. Thank you, everybody. The next one we're on is E.
Okay, so this particular policy, we just wanted to add some language to it that was consistent to prior updates that we made to policies, prior policies 4118 and 5131. We wanted basically electronic nicotine delivery systems and vape product definitions to be exactly the same between the community use of tobacco and substitute devices to the personnel one to the student one. So that is the only change you'll see on this. We adjusted the title and we added the same paragraph defining electronic nicotine delivery systems and vapor products so that they all match. Does anyone have any changes that they'd like to recommend?
So let's take consensus on that one, starting with Mr. Ross.
Yes.
Ms. Castelli,
Yes.
Ms. Allenson,
Yes.
Ms. Purcell,
Yes.
Ms. Raccio,
Yes.
Ms. Levesque,
Yes.
Mr. Votto,
Yes.
and Ms. Corso, yes. Thank you. Oh, Mr. Ross, you have something?
Yeah, can I just ask a quick question? If somebody's using an asthma inhaler, is it banned in this policy? Okay. 'Cause
I think only if it's distributing nicotine.
Okay, well, it says that may or may not contain nicotine. It says in the policy, you know, because I see a lot of kids using their rescue inhalers. Are we banning them?
No.
Does it say that?
Some vape pens have, you can control whether or not you have nicotine in the liquid. So it's excluding those essentially so that you can't say, well, this vape doesn't have any nicotine in it, so it should be allowed.
Okay, I guess
I
it
think
covers the
that's my
power source in it.
perception.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, last one for the evening, policy KE, school community relationships. You're muted, Mrs. Latour.
Sorry, and then I froze on top of it. This particular policy is being recommended for a potential deletion. It is policy KE. It was last revised in 1973. This particular policy discusses school and community relationships. We felt through many other policies involved with Wallingford Public Schools that it incorporates the need for strong bonds between school and community. We felt this policy was redundant. It's not aligned to any state or legal statute, so we felt we could delete it. And again, this is the ongoing process that we are trying to do to keep all of our really important policies and then kind of try to take out some of the policies that we may not need any longer to try to thin out our policy book. It's not that we don't support or appreciate school and community relationships. We just don't feel we need to have a board policy that states that we feel it's important.
Okay, let's take consensus on the deletion of policy KE, starting with Mr. Ross.
Yes.
Ms. Castelli,
Yes.
Ms. Allenson,
Yes.
Ms. Purcell,
Yes.
Ms. Raccio,
Yes.
Ms. Levesque,
Yes.
Mr. Votto,
Yes.
and Mrs. Corso, yes. Thank you, Mrs. Latour.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, so this concludes our instructional committee meeting on February 1st. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.